If you're planning to retire in 2026, the decisions that you make over this next few months is likely to be the difference between a smooth transition into retirement and a potentially stressful one. During most of your career, retirement decisions were relatively straightforward. Save diligently, invest wisely, and let time do its thing. But here you are at the doorstep of retirement, and suddenly accumulation is not the focus anymore. Now it's about the transition and the complexity that those decisions are going to bring to the table. You want to know exactly where your income's coming from month to month when that final paycheck cashes. You want to make sure that you're aligning your wealth in a way that's designed to help facilitate that with the least amount of risk possible. And you want to make sure that you're in a position to isolate the biggest threats that are outside of your control as you're going through this retirement journey. But figuring out how to coordinate all those moving parts often presents more of a dilemma than most people anticipate. I've had the opportunity to work with people in their 60s who are navigating this transition now for the last 20 plus years. And I can tell you the most common thing that I observe from this group during this specific window is that they simply don't realize all of the decisions that have to be made during this last year before you actually retire. And it catches a lot of people off guard. A lot of people reach this point with a really healthy portfolio that they've worked so hard to build, but very little plan with how to actually leverage it in a way that's going to be able to help facilitate the retirement that you want. There are 7 critical benchmarks that I believe separates a smooth transition into retirement from a stressful one. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what those are, and if 2026 is your year to retire, why I believe they are non-negotiables to ensure that you're able to retire with confidence and security. Let's dive in. Number 1, start your dress rehearsal now. The very first thing that I would encourage you to do right now if you're thinking about retirement in the next few months is to start living on your retirement income today. The truth is, most people at this stage in their working lives are at the peak of their income years, and for most folks that also means that they're at their peak spending years. Now all of a sudden you go off what I call the income cliff. You lose your salary, your working wages, and only a portion of that is made up by income sources like Social Security, and if you're lucky, a pension. For most people, this means that you're now living on a fraction of the income that you were previously living on. This means that your portfolio is going to have to make up the difference. Now, when you are trying to make sure that you're building an income strategy for retirement, the biggest mistake that you can make is underestimating your spending. It's not uncommon for me to sit down with a new couple who is going through this process and we'll work through a detailed budget, and they have a hard time narrowing in on exactly how much they think they're really going to spend. So we determine what the number looks like, but then we fast forward 6 to 12 months into retirement and we find that they were spending 10, 20, 30% more than they expected to. This completely changes the picture from a planning perspective. So how do you avoid this? The answer is you have to start the dress rehearsal now. You have to start treating today like it's every day in retirement and make sure that you're clear about your spending needs to help you support the life that you hope to live. That's really what this is ultimately about. But the more closely you can narrow in and understand exactly what that spending is likely to look like, the more clear and confident you can be about the planning decisions that will follow. If you're planning to retire in 2026, you're in your most important planning window right now. A lot of these things you can handle on your own, but a lot of them require careful coordination, and they can potentially cause costly mistakes if you're not careful. I work every single day with people who are in their early 60s who are navigating this exact transition. If you're finding that there's a lot of complexity here and there's some things that maybe you want some help coordinating, let's schedule a conversation. You can click the link below in the description for some more details, and we'll talk to you soon. Number 2, lock in your actual dates and dollars. The second step that we have to go through here is making sure that we understand how to take our income plan from concept to execution. You may have a firm understanding of what your income gap looks like, but now is the time to make sure that you're locking in the exact starting dates and the exact dollar figures that are going to be hitting your bank account once your last paycheck goes away. When will your first Social Security check hit? When does your pension begin? Are there additional final payouts from your employer that have to be taken into account? Perhaps a bonus or vacation time that's going to get paid out. Which accounts are you going to be pulling from in month 1, month 2, month 3, and so on once your paychecks actually stop? Have you built a tax projection to ensure that you understand how much money needs to be withheld from your paychecks to help ensure that you're not left with a nasty tax bill at the end of the year? So the more clarity you can have about when you can actually expect cash to be coming in the door, the more clear and confident you can be about how you're going to be able to spend and satisfy the things that you're looking forward to doing once you actually retire. The families who retire most confidently have this on the calendar. Number 3, make the investment shift before you retire, not after. The third thing you want to focus on is making sure that you restructure your portfolio in the final year of work when you still have the benefit of a paycheck. Here's why timing is so critical. First, if you wait until after you retire, you're going to be forced to make really important investment decisions while simultaneously trying to juggle the emotional transition that you're going to be going through when you leave work for retirement. This likely puts you in a position where you're making decisions potentially out of a position of fear rather than being proactive. So the key is you want to make this shift strategically while you're still employed, when you're doing so from a position of stability. We just finished building a portfolio for a new client couple who's going through this exact process. And through that process, we developed 4 distinct buckets. The first is what we call your forever bucket. This is where we take into account Social Securities, pensions, and any income streams that you want that are going to be your baseline paychecks for as long as you live. These are the checks that are going to come in the door month in and month out and help to give you the peace of mind of knowing how you're going to pay the bills. Bucket number 2 is your liquidity bucket. The purpose of the liquidity bucket is twofold. Number 1, we want to allocate for our emergency fund, typically 6 months worth of expenses. And second, we want what we call our SWAN allocation. This is the additional amount of money that's going to help you to sleep better at night. Different for everybody, but whatever's going to make you rest easy. Third, our protection allocation. This is where we stress test the portfolio to help ensure that we isolate what are the single biggest risks that we are going to face in retirement. This typically shows up in 3 primary areas. Number 1, market timing. If you simply retire at the wrong time and you retire into some sort of a bear market or a recessionary type of environment, you want to make sure that you understand the potential impact that that has on your income strategy and that you plan around it. Number 2, you want to isolate the income loss from a loss of a spouse. A lot of people underestimate how much money they need to potentially make up in the event that they suddenly lose their spouse and the resulting income. We want to quantify that and plan around it. And third, long-term care and healthcare. If there's a likelihood based on family history, your current lifestyle, current health, that there is a high likelihood of living longer, then we have an increased likelihood that you are going to have a major healthcare event at some point that would require some sort of skilled care. We want to isolate that and understand how we want to plan for it so that you can ultimately leave your family a gift rather than a burden. Finally is our growth bucket. This is our long-term strategic allocation into the equity markets, and this is where we are looking for long-term growth opportunity. We want to be able to participate in the market without having to rely on it. When you go through this process before you retire, you no longer have to lie awake at night worrying about a market correction because you've already built protection into the plan. Number 4, lock in your healthcare and Medicare strategy. The 4th thing is getting your health insurance in order, and this one has massive financial implications that a lot of people underestimate. If you're retiring before 65, how you structure your income in those early years could make the difference between paying full price for your health insurance or potentially getting significant subsidies. If you're over 65, your income is going to be used to determine whether or not you're going to pay standard Medicare rates or whether you're going to get hit with surcharges. This is why it's so crucial to make sure that your healthcare strategy, your income strategy, and your tax strategy are well coordinated. You simply can't plan one without the other. My recommendation here is to start this process about a year out and make sure that you have your plan locked in 3 months before your last day of work. Number 5, capturing tax planning opportunities that go away once you retire. The 5th thing that we want to make sure we think about is capturing any tax planning opportunities that will disappear once you actually retire. If you're living on your retirement budget, you should have free cash flow. Use that cash flow to max out your IRAs, your 401ks, your Roths, your HSAs, whatever's appropriate for you to make sure that you are getting as much saved as possible. Here's the other thing a lot of people don't think about. Your final year of work is when you actually get to preview your tax picture in retirement. You can see what your income will look like without your paycheck, and you can start planning for Roth conversions during those early windows in retirement once your income actually drops. We recently had a client who was really charitably inclined, and so one of the opportunities that we focus on here is how do we leverage our portfolio structure with our tax structure? For them, it made sense to take their charitable inclinations, but to make sure that we are leveraging some tax code to make sure that we're getting tax benefit for their generosity. Here's how we did that. They had an after-tax brokerage account that had significant capital gains in it. So what we decided to do was to quantify how much are they planning to donate over the next 3 to 5 years. We took that amount, and it just so happened that it closely aligned with this highly appreciated after-tax account. So what we're going to do is open a donor-advised fund. We now are able to take that highly appreciated brokerage account, donate it to the donor-advised fund, avoid capital gains, and get a full deduction on that donation. We can now distribute directly from that donor advised fund, satisfying our future charitable objectives, but reducing our tax bill in the process. These moves require coordination between your final year of work and those first few years of retirement. A truly confident retirement includes a multi-year tax strategy that begins before you retire. The sixth thing we want to focus on here is cleaning up your balance sheet. And this matters in that final year before you retire because it's the last year you're going to have a working paycheck. Once you retire, priorities like paying off debt become psychologically more difficult because you're operating on a smaller fixed income. But if you've got the free cash flow, now is the time to knock out those car payments, pay down your mortgage, and build that emergency fund. If it's relevant to you, now is also the best time to have those difficult conversations. If you're responsible currently for an adult child, and that's something that needs to potentially adjust once you retire, you need to have that conversation now. If you're having those conversations, it's okay to frame it around your retirement. Here's the reality of how things are getting ready to change for us, and here's what it means for you. This is a conversation we end up having to have a lot more than you may think. The families that retire most confidently have margin. They're not carrying unnecessary debt or obligations into retirement. And finally, last but not least, number 7, make sure that you test the non-financial side of retirement before you're in it. The fact is, you can have the perfect financial structure and still really struggle with this part of the transition. There is both a psychological shift that's going to occur once you actually retire, your lost identity, your loss of structure, what you're going to wake up and do every day. Stats tell us that about 90% of relationships are lost within the first 6 months of retirement. So making sure that you have a game plan to ensure that you remain connected and that you build your social network in retirement is a real challenge for a lot of people. And the final thing is how those relationship dynamics are going to change with your spouse when all of a sudden you're on each other's turf 24/7. The bottom line is retirement planning is about a lot more than just your balance sheet. The key here is that true comprehensive retirement planning addresses both the financial and the non-financial realities of what this life transition is going to hold for you, and making sure that you're thoughtful about how you're going to leverage your resources to facilitate the life and the lifestyle that you're hoping to experience once you actually enter into this new chapter. So in your final year, do your best to do some experimenting. Take some meaningful time off and actually test the waters. See what that unstructured time actually feels like. Have these conversations with your spouse as well. Make sure that you're on the same page of what a typical day in the life is going to look like when you're together. These aren't necessarily financial questions, but they very much affect your plan. If you're bored 6 months in, you might find that you're overspending to help fill the void. The families who retire successfully, they've been testing it, talking about it, and building structure around it that helps to ensure that retirement feels like freedom. Your final year before retirement is unlike any other year in your financial life. If you're seeing that there's a lot of complexity here that you really haven't thought through just yet and would like some help navigating it, that's what we specialize in. I work with people who are in their late 50s and early 60s who are typically within 18 months or less of retirement. These are usually people who have done a great job saving and they have a really good understanding of the fundamentals, but they also realize that this transition is really going to present some different complexity that I don't feel like I can handle on my own, or I simply don't want to. They're looking for somebody to help them coordinate their income strategy, their tax strategy, their investment and healthcare strategies, making sure that all those moving parts are properly coordinated before they actually retire. If you're planning to retire in 2026 and you want to make sure that these 7 things are handled, there's a link in the description to schedule a conversation. We'll help you look at your situation and make sure that you're clear about what needs to happen. Last thing, if you have not already done so, be sure to subscribe. This is a brand new channel that is dedicated to helping people navigate the complexity of retirement planning, both the financial side and the non-financial side. So if that's information that you're interested in, I'm going to put out new videos every single week, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. Thanks for watching.